Welcome to the southwest of England. Quaint, beautiful, historic, stunning. But nowhere's perfect, folks. The southwest has problems too. And in this series we investigate the places the media and the internet have dubbed the worst places in the region. This is part 2 of the worst places in southwest England. Number 10, Penzance. Starting off part 2 with the last major town in the southwest at 255 miles from London in deepest Cornwall, with Land's End a few miles one side and St Michael's Mount a few miles the other side. Penzance has been attracting people for centuries. Unfortunately, it seems that some of the people it's attracted lately haven't necessarily been the types that you might want. Whilst researching Penzance, I found articles calling it the worst coastal town in Cornwall, a Reddit user describing it as the end of the line for wrong uns run out of town, and a YouTube video that called it Brown Town on account of how prevalent heroin addiction is in the area. As you'd expect from a town whose name is forever associated with pirates, Penzance is located in a bay, namely Mounts Bay, with access to the Atlantic Ocean. Unfortunately, the coastal path close to the town was strewn with dog mess and crappy graffiti. A shame because the view to St Michael's Mount is fantastic. I went to have a look around the harbour in the morning. Penzance is only a small town of around 21,000 and this was mid-October, so low season with the typical 4 seasons in one day type of weather. The Wharfside shopping centre was alright, a few indie places in there, and I managed to get an overpriced cream tea. Back down to the harbour then, and so I walked along the seafront. Penzance is very much a working town still, unlike a sort of tourist town like Newquay or St Ives. The beauty of the coastal scenery here contrasted with the ugliness of the crappy graffiti. The 1930s Art Deco Jubilee pool has a geothermal pool. In layman's terms, that's a heated pool. How great does this look? Certainly looks nicer than the beaches anyway. Along the seafront and the surrounding areas are quite a few nice looking pubs and restaurants. We've got a few that are closed down. Just off the front is Daniel Place, which must be one of the most colourful streets in Britain. Because of Penzance's southerly latitude, subtropical plants are able to grow here in the Morab Gardens, just by the amusement arcade near the Pebble Beach leading up to Newlyn. I found my first bit of evidence of people using Class A drugs. This end of town is a bit neglected and run down, but it still has some charm. It's also where the Cornish Pirates rugby team play their home games, and thankfully they had a roof there because the heavens just opened as I got there. The Pirates play in the second tier of English Rugby Union. Penzance AFC football team are just around the corner. As well as sports, Penzance has culture. We've got an open air theatre here and the School of Art in the old library. The school is closed currently and locals are working hard to try and save it. There's another art gallery in the town here. Speaking of which, onto the town centre then. St John's Hall is the town hall and the council offices, and it's one of the largest granite buildings in the country. The streets of Penzance are pretty narrow, designed long before the motor vehicle, and good grief, brutalism meet mildew. The sea air certainly hasn't done this building any good. Apparently the building is in process of a refurbishment at the moment. This is the market house, the jewel in the crown of the town centre. It's quite nice around here. I've got some old style cottages here, nice buildings like the Egyptian house built in 1835. You can now rent it out, I believe, on Airbnb. And the Union Hotel, with over 400 years of history and containing the second oldest theatre in Britain. The oldest pub in Penzance is here too, the Turk's Head, established in 1233. And the Admiral Benbow, that's only been going since 1695. That's a relative youngster. St Mary's Church is the largest church in Penzance, and all these buildings I've just listed are on Chapel Street, and it's well worth taking a look here. The surrounding streets, just slightly off Chapel Street, can look a bit shabby, but there's still a bit of a charm in exploring them. Got a bit of contrast here with the building styles on either side of this street. The 1930s Ritz Cinema was due to be demolished, but was saved by Merlin Cinema Group in 2025. Back towards the town, and Market Dew Street is a bit of a mixed bag. Quite a lot of it is run down, boarded up, and there's a fair bit of construction work going on, so hopefully it will be looking a bit prettier soon. Despite the odd nice building, it clearly has seen better days. The old Bramwell's Mill has been a Premier Inn since 2020. Overall, Penzance isn't too bad a place. It does have a pretty high crime rate, and I did see a few folk around town that were clearly intoxicated, either on drink or drugs, and this was on a Monday morning / lunchtime. Parts of Penzance suffer from severe deprivation, with some parts being in the top 3% of deprived areas nationwide. With traditional industries like fishing and mining in decline, and Penzance being geographically right at the end of the country, finding work is tough. Nevertheless, it's a charming and historic town, and I recommend everyone visit, for a day at least. Number 9, Gloucester. The city of Gloucester, famous for its cathedral, its rugby team, double Gloucester cheese, and for possibly the most infamous serial killer husband and wife in Britain. Gloucester has a population of around 135,000 and is very historic, being founded by the Romans in AD 97. Gloucester has a fairly high crime rate of over 100 in 1,000, and whilst researching, I'd read that the city centre was in very bad shape. But my initial impressions weren't too bad. King Square here was renovated in 2022, and although most of the shopping areas look pretty old, this Wetherspoons in a former cinema was probably the nicest building in the square. The streets in this part of the city centre have some pretty nice shops and buildings like St Michael's Tower here and the Gloucestershire Shire Hall, with Gloucester being the county town of Gloucestershire. Some nice Tudor buildings here, although some are boarded up. And down by the cathedral, it's pretty lovely actually. Harry Potter fans might recognise the cathedral, as it was used as a stand-in for Hogwarts in some of the movies. There's been a religious building here since 678, but the cathedral has been built, burnt, rebuilt and refurbished multiple times over the centuries. There's still a couple of nice touristy places around here, but for the most part, Gloucester does look like a pretty ordinary place. And there's a few nutters about, like this man shouting at no one in particular. And then there was this fella. This guy's walking bare feet on a wet floor, and he's got like a trident or something by the looks of it. The area of Kingsholm is statistically one of the more deprived areas of the city. It's also home to the Gloucester Rugby Union team, who play in the Premiership, and in 2025 they finished in 5th place. You'll notice a lot of colourful houses in Gloucester. This is part of a scheme by a local artist to inject some colour into the city. Sherborne Cinema is perhaps the smallest cinema I've ever seen, with one screen and 110 seats. Now this part of town is a far cry from the cathedral. Fly tipping, graffiti and a symbolic shopping trolley. This is the derelict Gloucester College, which actually closed on its centenary. It opened in 1907 and it closed in 2007. We're now on Barton Street. According to some media sources, Barton Street is the most diverse street in Britain, with 70 or more languages spoken here. I started off down the quieter, more residential eastern end, and it's pretty drab, it has to be said. Heading further towards the town, it does get a bit more colourful. Both of these Victorian pubs are closed down now, as is the Picturedrome Theatre. What we've got is the usual assortment of takeaways, barbers, bookies, and we've got some political street art here. Past the GL1 Leisure Centre, we go from Barton Street to Eastgate Street, with the Victorian baths that later become a nightclub, now lying empty, broke, censored, and up for sale. We've got charity shop, fried chicken shop, nail bar, Euro convenience store, and a closed down charity shop. We could be just about anywhere in Britain, really. Keep calm and avoid the rat race. Taken a little bit too literally in this case, I think. The top rank club here hasn't had a rank at all since 2022. The Argos here has been closed since 2017. Generally, Eastgate Street is very depressing. A nightmare indeed. More centrally, the library looked nice, and this large warehouse used to house a climbing wall, which has now been moved out of town. Gloucester is very close to Cheltenham, and naturally people make comparisons between the two. In fact, there were secret talks to perhaps merge the two together at some point in the future. Now, it's a bit harsh to compare anywhere to Cheltenham really, because Cheltenham is a very affluent, upmarket kind of place. Now, Gloucester city centre isn't all that bad as long as we're not comparing it to Cheltenham. What it does have though are some annoying wannabe plastic gangsters who sound idiotic with a West Country accent, trying to sound like Londoners, like Wurzel Gummidge crossed with Dizzy Rascal. It's ridiculous, stop it. Anyways, this is the former prison they use now for events like ghost tours, which is pretty cool. And we arrive at Gloucester Docks. Now, quite easily, this is one of the best parts of the city, along with the cathedral. Gloucester is Britain's most inland port on the River Severn, and Gloucester Docks contains 15 Victorian warehouses, which are all now listed buildings. It's a nice place to walk around with large open areas and plenty of seatings, and it's also got probably the fanciest Morrison's Daily and quite a nice Wetherspoons. I should probably point out that this video isn't sponsored by Wetherspoons, by the way. Then we get to Gloucester Quays, the outlet mall, which is almost certainly the reason the city centre is in decline. All the usual sort of high street shops, just cheaper as it's an outlet, and the usual franchise restaurants and places to take selfies for the gram. I couldn't go to Gloucester without visiting the homes of the infamous Fred and Rose West. It's a very eerie place to be. The blood runs cold thinking of all the horrible things that happened. The house, 25 Cornwall Street, has been demolished, and in its place is an alleyway. I was surprised to see a tent at the bottom of the alleyway. It seems a very strange place to camp. This is right next to the patio that the victims' bodies were buried under. And that was Gloucester. Just one last thing to do was to take the helter-skelter out of the car park and on to the next place. Number 8, Weston-super-Mare. My introduction to Weston was the Plaza Cinema, which is £6 a ticket. So I thought this place can't be too bad. And then I had a look around. On the Bristol Channel, around 20 miles southwest of Bristol itself, with a population of about 83,000, Weston is one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of declined British seaside towns. Nicknamed Weston-super-Mud due to its muddy beach, or Weston-super-Nightmare, Weston basically means West Town, and the words super-mare or super-mare are actually Latin for upon the sea. Now, Weston has been covered a lot by YouTubers down the years, and they all say the same thing. The town has gone majorly downhill when it's bleak and it's miserable, etc. But starting with one positive, I do like the street art here in Weston. Weston has loads of it, and it definitely gives the place some colour and some character. This structure is called the Silica, or locally known as the Carrot. This is the town hall. Now we're going to go over to the older part of town, which has this free museum here, but that aside, it's pretty run down here. The pedestrianised High Street likewise, and the Sovereign Shopping Centre too, with a fair few closed down stores. The Italian Gardens had a large group of people getting drunk. This was on a weekday lunchtime. Now apparently a lot of people have been sent down to Weston over the years as rehabilitation to get off drinks or drugs next to the sea. Rehabilitation by the sea seems to be a popular initiative. In Bournemouth, where we visited in part 1, Rhyl in Wales, Blackpool, and even where I used to live in Worthing, West Sussex, there are people sent to convalesce. Quite often these folks will meet like-minded people and naturally slip into old habits. It's not easy getting off an addiction. So they'll be drinking and using in the parks and on the beaches, which obviously isn't good for tourism and surely doesn't help these seaside towns to recover. This end of Weston is very run down, but some bars and the Playhouse Theatre are still operating and are still popular. But I'll let the images speak for themselves on the Weston indoor market. It's all pretty sad here, quite bleak, and the weather didn't help. Onto the seafront then. The Bristol Channel has the second largest tidal range in the world, and at low tide the water retreats by over a mile, revealing mud. Lots and lots of sticky mud. In summer 2021, over 50 people had to be rescued from the mud in a single weekend. The Grand Pier was pretty quiet with it being low season. Like all great British seaside towns, there's thousands of flying rodents waiting to steal your chips. The sun had come out by this point and the Winter Gardens and the Royal Hotel were gleaming. Weston-super-Mare is the birthplace of John Cleese, and so it's fitting that there are plenty of quirky hotels here. Here on the northern end of the town is where you can find Burnbeck Pier. The pier is unique in that it connects onto an island, but sadly it's been closed to the public since 1994 and has been damaged many times by storms since. Apparently it is going to be restored, however, with the National Lottery Heritage Fund pledging £5.5 million. This part of Weston has a lot of faded grandeur, but it's pretty quiet and it's nice for a mooch about. After a pretty bleak day, it was nice to enjoy a sunset, which Weston is famous for. It's going to need a lot of investment, but Weston-super-Mare is far from the worst seaside town in the country. Number 7, Paignton. Yeah, another seaside town. This time on the English Riviera. Sorry, I have to suppress a giggle every time I hear it called that. Paignton in Devon has amongst its attractions a steam railway that's just under 7 miles to Kingswear and costs 25 quid or slightly more if you want to get the boat back. Paignton is a town of small guest houses on the back streets, some of which won't be there much longer, and large hotels on the seafront. Also sandy beaches and parks, this one with a homeless person in it. Technicolor Gorilla welcomes us to the old wooden pier, which is actually pretty decent, with everything open, and it features Mr. Bean, Mickey Mouse, Popeye and Jurassic Park, with views to the rough English Channel, the surfers in the distance there, and these absolute lunatics swimming. The beach is alright, and the red sand here is pretty unusual. As well as the arcades, you've got a couple of restaurants on the front, and weirdly there's a cinema. I'm not sure why that needs to be in front of the beach, like blocking the sea from the front. That's just a bit weird, but hey-ho. Got some nice colourful hotels here and thatch cottage, and we've got the harbour nearby. Quite a nice little place for a stroll. On the other side of the harbour, we've got a colourful street, a fishmongers, and then Fairy Cove. Nearby, we've got a nice Paignton here with a danger of death sign stuck in the middle of it. Around the corner from there, heading south, is Goodwington, and it's quieter than Paignton town centre, aside from Splashdown Key West Water Park. Up a big hill from there is Paignton Zoo, which is about 20 quid for an adult, and it gets good reviews. We head now to the town centre and the ironically named Winner Street. This is in the oldest part of Paignton, and apparently it used to be quite some place. Nowadays it's eerie, ghostly quiet. Around the corner in Church Street, it's the same. Even the church itself was pretty quiet. The 14th century Kirkham House is the oldest building in Paignton. The Coverdale Tower is from around the same sort of time. Palace Avenue here has most buildings closed down. The decorated phone box is next to the Palace Theatre. The roof on these buildings here on Victoria Road has rotten away and the building is condemned, meaning Phone Fix and the Queen Vic pub have had to close. On the flip side, we've got a brand new library here. Brand new isn't a term that's been used to describe much on Torquay Road recently. This is kind of like the main tourist strip, selling fast food and fridge magnets. Got a bizarre Sri Lankan and Italian fusion restaurant here, and this vape shop that got closed for selling stuff that was more harmful and illegal than just vapes. This is Victoria Centre, which is, according to Torquay Council, in the process of regeneration. The northern end of Paignton could do with regenerating too. I'm sure that even the staunchest patriots will agree this graffiti is pretty pathetic. Reading forums, it's hard to put a finger on exactly how Paignton can improve for the future, but from what I can tell, the investment from the council all seems to go into tourist areas, i.e. the seafront, and the rest of the town is neglected year on year. And what I saw personally in Paignton seems to back that up. Number 6, Camborne, the side of Cornwall that holiday makers don't see. Cornwall is one of the poorest regions of Western Europe. Fishing is down, tourism is only in select areas, and mining is non-existent. Mining of tin and copper made Camborne and nearby Redruth reportedly one of the richest places in the world in the late 18th century. Now, Camborne is the poorest town in the poorest county in Britain. Many of the old buildings are vacant, like the council offices here. This place is a world away from places like Moulsell, Padstow or St Ives, where the rich folk have their second homes. Work here is scarce, public transport is unreliable, and addiction and homelessness are significant issues. Just before my visit, 18 temporary cabin-style housing pods were removed after residents protested an increase in drugs and antisocial behaviour in the area. Some good news is that Camborne's South Crofty tin mine is due to be reopened in 2028, creating several hundred jobs. When Britain was still in the European Union, Cornwall, as one of the poorest regions in Europe, received around £100 million per year from Brussels. After Brexit, around £48 million per year, and according to media sources, now receives £10 million at best from the Labour central government. It sounds unsustainable to me, although it does make me question, why did 56.5% of Cornwall folk vote to leave the European Union in the first place? The old Stray Park pumping engine house seems to have been used by homeless folk and as a dumping ground. The closest thing that Camborne has to a tourist attraction is this stone Tree of Life, which is the emblem of Camborne. Church Lane has boarded up buildings, the graveyard has graffiti, but the parish church itself is quite nice. Camborne is a small town of around 24,000 and it has a rugby union team. Camborne used to be in a region where they only spoke Cornish. Then the mines opened up and the language is almost forgotten. Now the mines are getting a revival, maybe the language could too, and maybe Camborne could recover some of its wealth, heritage and identity. Only time will tell. Number 5, Torquay, the birthplace of Agatha Christie here on the English Riviera. Torquay is perhaps most famous for being the setting of Fawlty Towers, which is a far cry from the 4-star Indigo Hotel here that opened in late November 2025, or the Grand Hotel, which actually opened in 1881, which is also 4-star. If beaches were given a star rating, however, Torquay would probably score a 3 at a push, probably more like a 2, although I am told that the water is beautiful on a sunny day. Torquay developed in the 19th century with the arrival of the railway and its popularity with the Victorian gentry, whom called the area the English Riviera, as it reminded them of the French Riviera with its mild climate and palm trees. Torre Abbey is the oldest building in the town, originally a 12th century monastery, later a country house and now a museum. Abbey Park surrounding it was opened in 1924. Very nice it is, although it does have the 1980s brutalist Riviera International Centre looming over it, looking slightly at odds with the palm trees. Along the front here, where the land train passes, on the left-hand side is the sleek Abbey Sands development, where apartments cost between £550,000 to £800,000, and you've got restaurants on the ground floor like Las Iguanas and Bistro Pierre. Further along the front, by the old Princess Fishing Pier, we've got the highly rated Princess Theatre, named after the Princess Gardens, that were in turn named after Princess Louise, the daughter of Queen Victoria. The Pavilion Theatre is undergoing restoration works after lying derelict since 2013, 101 years after it was first opened. It still needs more funding, so no reopening date has been confirmed. The council did hold a meeting with locals recently who voted unanimously that they want this theatre reopened. Agatha Christie's bust welcomes us to the town centre, with a few closed shops here and further along the Strand, a massive Debenhams-sized hole here. As we can see here, people do still love to visit Torquay. Approximately 4.5 million people visit the English Riviera every year, apparently, although this is much lower than the estimated 12 million per year in its 1970s heyday. Over 70% of Torquay's visitors are 55 or over, and 22% of its population are 65 and over. For young people, there is stuff to do if you're active, water sports, hiking, that kind of thing, but there's not a huge amount in the way of nightlife or excitement. Realistically, if you've got a week's holiday, are you going to spend your hard-earned money paying a fortune for petrol or train tickets? You're looking at probably over £100 return from London to Torquay on a train, and then stay in an expensive, mediocre hotel with unreliable weather and just a couple of nightclubs to choose from? Or are you going to go to the Costa del Sol with guaranteed sunshine and party until dawn for probably the same amount of money, maybe even less when you factor in the cost of a pint. Anyway, I digress. Torquay has this museum which is inexplicably halfway up a hill. In the last video we had a Hilton in front of a tip. This time we've got merely dog mess, which is actually outside this Premier Inn here. On the same street as the Premier Inn and the Hilton is this Regency building up for sale. This street is called The Terrace and it overlooks the main town. This structure here used to be a stairwell to a bank. This is probably the posh part of town above the centre, but as we make our way down the steps it gets grimy very quickly. Onto Fleet Street here, and we have lined up a Wetherspoons, Sports Direct and a KFC. And if that's not enough shopping, then on Fleet Walk there's a few shops that are open. Torquay town centre is quite run down. According to forums, it started to decline either in the 70s, 80s or the 90s. £100 million is apparently being invested into the town, and it has to be said, it does need it. The council say they want to turn it into a year-round destination by 2030, with redevelopment including the town centre, the pavilion which I showed you before, and the Strand, which is where the closed Debenhams is. Another issue Torquay has to deal with is a high crime rate of around 107 in 1,000, which is very high for this part of the world. And I was there on a weekday and I saw numerous people milling about, drinking industrial strength alcohol, taking up the whole pavement so people would have to walk around them, including women with buggies and elderly folk in mobility scooters and walking sticks. At one point I walked past an alleyway with one of them pissing up against the wall, and judging by the smell he wasn't the first one to do it. Now these might seem like minor gripes to some people, and yes, worse things happen in other places, but this is meant to be a holiday resort. Who wants to go on holiday somewhere that smells like piss? Well, R. Kelly maybe, but he's in prison, he won't be coming out anytime soon. Torquay Town Hall looked quite nice, but Torquay Central Church looks more Ruski than Riviera, more Soviet than seaside. It's good to know that BT are protecting us for the future. Now I know not to expect Sydney Opera House, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon or herds of wildebeests sweeping majestically, but I was hoping for scenes more like this than this. Torquay United Football Club have also gone into decline over the years. After 80 years in the Football League, Torquay were relegated in 2007. They bounced back up 2 years later, only to be relegated again in 2014. Since then, Torquay have bounced between the 5th and the 6th tiers, entered administration in 2024, but finally some good news in 2025. They came out of administration, and at the time of editing this video in February 2026, they are top of the National League South. Babbacombe is a suburb of Torquay with a Victorian museum here. It's definitely nicer here than Torquay Town Centre, feeling more like Britain did in years gone by with the cafes, newsagents, sweet shops and pubs. There's also a model village with scenes of English life, including a thatched cottage on fire. Babbacombe is on a cliff, and if you don't want to take the path up or down, you can take the railway. We're on the southwest coast path here, and as you'd expect from this part of the world, we do have some lovely sea views, and we've even got this little waterfall here. Sadly, as we make our way back to town through the back streets, it does start to get grimy once again. The old Torquay police station has been closed for years. Now, I've seen people say that Torquay is the worst seaside town in Britain. Well, that's exaggerating, but It's certainly not the town it once was, or the town one might expect when you hear names like English Riviera, for example. If it wasn't for older generations seeking nostalgia, I'm really not sure who's visiting Torquay these days. Hopefully in the coming years, the council will make good on their plans to bring Torquay into the 21st century. Number 4, Cinderford, famous for its rusty pole. No, seriously, this is Cinderford's number 1 tourist attraction. Located on the hills above the Severn Valley, it certainly is a majestic rusty pole. Aside from that epic tourist attraction, you may not have heard much about Cinderford. Well, Cinderford is the smallest town on this list with a population of 8,777 at the last census, and is in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire. It's a former coal mining town that was severely affected in the 1960s when the mines closed down. There isn't a huge amount to the town, to be honest. It's reminiscent of other ex-mining towns we've visited on this channel, like the ones in the Welsh valleys or northeast England. Cinderford does have this vintage cinema, which seems to be the number 1 thing to do in the town. Public transport is basic, but that doesn't stop the bus station being the centre of the dilapidated town. I'd read that the locals in Cinderford are quite wary of outsiders. A comment I'd read on a different YouTube video about the place said that they'd lived in Cinderford for a short time and met people who'd never left the town, and Gloucester, just 13 miles away, was like a different world. In the 19th century, 4 travelling Frenchmen were in the town with their 2 performing bears. A bogus rumour was spread that the bears had killed a child, and so some 13 local vigilantes killed the bears and beat up the Frenchmen. Cinderford's crime rate of 106 in 1,000 is quite high, especially for a small town. Not wanting to end up getting murdered like French bears or hung up on a rusty pole, we decided to move on to the next place. Number 3, Bridgwater. Bridgwater, or Bridgie as it's known by locals, is a town of about 42,000 with the highest crime rate in Somerset. It's a town famous for its carnival in November, but more recently has been getting negative attention for its increasing crime, drugs and antisocial behaviour. This street from the railway station to the town, St John Street, wasn't the best of starts, with rows of drab shops, bookies and barbers. I do appreciate a bit of colour though, and I found that in the funky Eastover shopping centre, with most of the stalls open. Like Weston-super-Mare nearby, Bridgwater has plenty of street art. The Eastover street itself though was more bookies and fast food, with the odd post office and pet shop. Bridgwater is on the River Parrett, whose banks double up as a place to dispose of your old booze containers, it seems. Ignoring that though, the riverfront did look quite nice. Walking past our first street drinkers of the day on 4 Street, we arrive at the central area of Bridgwater with Captain Robert Blake in front of the Cornhill Market with its neoclassical dome. Around the corner, Poundland has closed down and the nearest one is now in Taunton. That's not good. The Cornhill Market, albeit small, is pretty nice. Now, Bridgwater is a historic town mentioned in the Domesday Book in 1086, and many of the old buildings remain today. The Palace nightclub made national news in 2024 when a serious assault left a man with life-changing injuries. This cinema closed in 2022 and, despite being bricked up, is clearly being used for nefarious activities. The strange thing is, this is Scott's Cinema, and they didn't close down because they went bust or anything like that. It's because they moved to a different cinema, which we'll see shortly. So you'd think they'd have some sort of responsibility to the upkeep of the old cinema, but no, it's just left there derelict. And clearly it's magnet for ne'er-do-wells, which is presumably why there's such a police presence around the corner. Here we have a random painting just on a wall next to a one stop, popular with the daddy long legs. There's not much to say about this area, it just looks grim and there's more police. There's a new leisure park with the new cinema, and this opened in 2022. Got your typical kind of German kebabs, American pizza, South African chicken and fake Spanish lager. This part of town is more my kind of thing, much more authentic. And I've got to say, compared to other regions, the southwest of England really is pretty blessed. If Bridgwater were in the northwest or the southeast, I don't think it would even get into the top 20. Oh look, a Ferrari. Anyway, as you can see in the images, it actually looks quite nice, apart from out the back of the old cinema, of course. But Bridgwater has a bad reputation in this area. When I told my mate from Taunton that I just spent a few hours in Bridgwater, he laughed and said he was surprised I made it out alive. I've since discovered that it's at night time that things take a sharp nosedive. Antisocial behaviour, mostly from young people, include stabbings, a supermarket security guard being assaulted by 4 youths, and a couple of years ago, a 15-year-old boy was running around the town threatening people with a machete. With knife crime on the rise constantly across Britain, you have to ask, where's the deterrent? I think most people would agree with me, it should be an automatic prison sentence just for carrying. But then there's no space in the prisons and, well, that's another tangent I'll not go off on just now. There are certainly some nice areas of Bridgwater, like Admiral's Landing here. There's the historic Blake Museum here, and the riverfront looked even nicer in the sunshine. There's also Blake Gardens, although here I was smelling a very different type of grass to the one that you'd find in the ground. Now Bridgwater is number 3 on this list, but not even top 300 nationwide, I don't think. But the next place most definitely is. Number 2, Swindon. Swindon. In Wiltshire, which is statistically the safest county in Britain, Swindon is a large town of around 225,000. Swindon did a couple of times consider applying to be a city, but when its residents were surveyed, they overwhelmingly decided that it was too crap a place to have city status. Regardless, Swindon Council are applying to become the UK City of Culture in 2029 to attract some much needed investment. I was reading about this on the Swindon Community Notice Board Facebook group, the post of which received 6 likes and 6 laughs, 0 positive comments and 8 negative ones. Swindon does have a lot of art and murals in its town centre, and it does have the Museum of Computing, which appealed to my inner nerd. There's a theatre here, overlooking the Princes Street car park. Swindon was a pretty small place until it was designated a railway town, more on that later. And then post-war, Swindon was designated a London overspill town and was rapidly expanded. Around the same sort of time, the railway started to decline. Industrial decline, including the loss of 3,000 jobs in 2021 when the local Honda factory closed, have hit the town hard, although there are plans to repurpose the old Honda site. Swindon town looks gloomy, but the weather certainly didn't help on the day I visited. Liquor Lounge, Groove, and a few other bars and clubs all closed on the depressing Fleet Street. None of the new buildings here are nice to look at. And Swindon is yet another town with another huge empty Debenhams. It wasn't much fun at all, and looking at this I can see why people don't want to come into Swindon town centre. The best of Swindon, game changing, innovation, ambition. Are Swindon Council having a laugh? The Brunel shopping centre was completely closed on one side. Apparently this is, and I quote, to consolidate retail into the plaza and high street areas, reduce antisocial behaviour and manage high vacancy rates. And this is the heart of Swindon shopping. Out of the shopping centre, I headed towards Swindon's old railway area. Now this area is much more interesting than the town centre. Cinderford has its rusty pole, and Swindon has this bench, which is rated at 4.8 on Google reviews, with one reviewer calling it a contender for 8th wonder of the world. More wondrous to me was the Mechanics Institute, built for the railway workers in 1855 and closed since 1986. It's in danger of falling down soon, but unfortunately it's privately owned and the owners don't want anything to do with it. Through the tunnel, which used to look a bit like this, and now looks like this, Swindon is pretty much in the middle of Bath, Oxford, Cheltenham and Salisbury. 4 places you won't be seeing on any worst places lists anytime soon. It's also in between London and Bristol, and its location is what makes it a great place for a railway town. Established in 1843 by Isambard Kingdom Brunel and Daniel Gooch, at its peak it was one of the world's largest railway engineering complexes, but in the 60s the decline began, and by 1986 the last train had left the yard. Nowadays, the area has a museum called Steam dedicated to the Great Western Railway, which is very popular, and there's also a designer outlet mall, which is also very popular, complete with a steam train right there in the mall. Now, credit where it's due, whoever designed this, whoever built it, has done a brilliant job. Outside the mall, when things are starting to get gritty. The Great Western Railway Park here is a relic of when this used to be known as the Railway Village. Back in the day, railway workers were housed here, provided with healthcare, and were woken up by loud whistles when it's time to start their shifts. This was pioneering stuff back in the Victorian era, but there's not much pioneering going on in this neighbourhood, unfortunately. We first saw this tagger, Grim, in Gateshead, and here he is popping up all over Swindon. To be fair, maybe he has a point. There are some much nicer, more orderly areas of the railway village though. The terrace cottages looking pretty neat here. However, it doesn't take long to get back to normal. After how pleasant the old works of Swindon Railway were, you might expect the current station to look half decent. No. This is quite possibly the ugliest building I've seen attached to a railway station in the whole country. This station serves 2.8 million passengers per year. This is what people have been left with as a first and last impression of Swindon. Absolutely shocking. The area around Swindon station is equally crap. Dirty, grey, mindless tagging on the walls of private property. This is Manchester Road and the surrounding area, which leads up to Swindon Town Football Club. Swindon play at the county grounds and currently play in the 4th tier of English football. Their most famous moment came in 1969 when they beat Arsenal in the League Cup final. Right next to that is the infamous Magic Roundabout, which is actually 5 mini roundabouts arranged into what's called a ring junction. The back streets in Swindon, for my money, they're the worst in the southwest region. Honestly, I found the town to be deeply depressing, and the only thing that saved it from the #1 spot was the old railway yard. Oh, and here's a fun fact for you. Swindon in Old English means Swine Hill or Pig Hill. Number 1, St Austell. Nicknamed Snozzle by some and St Awful by others. Let me just start by saying St Austell wouldn't be top of virtually any of the other 10 regions of Britain that I've ranked. St Austell is in Cornwall and has a population of about 25,000. As can be seen, the weather was horrific when I visited, and there's a possibility this is why St Austell has ended up at number 1. The town centre, like Camborne, is a world away from the way Doc Marten or Poldark might picture it. The most impressive thing I saw in St Austell was this empty bottle of Jaeger on top of this shelf. Now this was about 12 feet up, so it must have been a 2-person operation. St Austell is an ex-mining town, once the global centre of China clay production. It's the largest town in Cornwall, and now it's the 2nd most deprived. The town centre was very quiet, with lots of shops boarded up. Pretty much the only people I saw on this street were drinking super strength booze in the driving rain at 10 o'clock in the morning. There are a few quaint places in St Austell, but to be honest, they are few and far between. A more modern area has a cinema, American restaurant, and a totem pole. This sculpture is made of china clay and it's meant to represent the china clay heritage of the town. It received so much negative attention, the local MP refused to unveil it. Another piece of public art here is the clay planet. The crime rate here is 90 in 1,000, which is very high for Cornwall. Facebook groups for places in Cornwall have names like Everything Padstow or We Love Newquay, but the largest local group for St Austell is St Austell It's a Dump, but it's our dump, which makes me wonder if there's a kind of ingrained negativity here and if that will ever go away. Maybe the nickname St Awful became so prevalent that people started to believe it. Now, a bit of self-deprecation isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's something us Brits do better than anyone else. But there also has to be a bit of pride and a bit of community. St Austell also suffers from not having a beach. It's close to some beaches, and the popular Eden project nearby houses the world's largest indoor rainforest. And it does have the very popular St Austell Brewery. Well, that's it, folks. The end of this video, the last of the series. In the coming weeks, I'll be posting a ranking of all the worst places in Britain before moving on to some completely different ranking related stuff. So if you haven't done so already, do subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.